Hey y'all, if you're a recurring listener of the show, I don't have to do too much of an introduction to OJ Spivey if you live in the Philadelphia area, but for the people who haven't listened before, for our first time listeners, and for people who don't really pay much attention to all that out in Philadelphia, could you introduce yourself a little bit for the fans?
Well, thanks, Matt. Thanks again for having me. My name is OJ Spivey. I'm a journalist for the Philadelphia Tribune, but I've been around pretty much the past 15 years. I've worked for the Undefeated, which is now Anscape. I've worked for local radio here for WRD. Done some writing here and there. I've covered sports for well over a decade, so I'm glad to be on with you.
Absolutely. So there's a whole lot going on. This is like the people, journalists, sports journalists, what I found is they refer to this period of the year as the downtime. But really, in terms of Philadelphia sports, I feel like it's really, there's a lot going on, actually. You got a lot of the free agency stuff you go on. You got the Phillies roaring back into playoff contention. You got Eagles training camp. You even got USFL for people who really just love watching, watching the X's and O's play out in real life. If you really, needed to get your fix on football, you could have watched the Philadelphia Stars, who went to their championship game. They got to find a better name than just the championship game. I mean, everything has a bowl or something. They got to figure that out. But needless to say, there's a lot going on. But we should start with the Sixers, because Mr. Harden, apparently by all accounts, saved the team about $15 million. First of all, am I correct in that dollar figure? And what do you think that equates to in terms of us being able to do something?
Well, you're right. That's the reported figure. That's the apparent figure that been in the news, and it's ironic because we're going almost 2 weeks into free agency and the deal hasn't been signed yet. So I find that kind of odd. But everybody's talking about the $15 million pay cut that he's apparently taking. But I think the more important thing, from my estimation, is the length of the contract, which is 2 years, which if we read correctly, it's basically a 1 year deal and a player option for a second. So I think that works well with the Sixers as far as their long-term plans, because this is a win now situation. And there's still some question marks as far as, okay, what type of Harden are we going to get? He's going to be a year older. You wonder if he's going to be back in shape. And we just have this presumption that everything's going to fall into place, that we've re-signed him. And I think that it's important that we not get caught up like we did, as if you're a fan, I should say, shouldn't get caught up as far as just saying, okay, we got rid of Ben Simmons. And a lot of people seem to be blinded about some of the shortcomings that James Harden has and some of his history. And one of it is just him being in shape. One of them just kind of disappearing in the playoffs, which we saw once again, whether you want to admit that or not. We saw that once again. But again, Ben Simmons is gone. So whoever we get in this place has to be an improvement. But that still shouldn't shade or blind some of the shortcomings that James Harden has. So I think it's good that he's going to get basically a 2 year deal, 1 year with the option. Because this thing could blow up in everybody's face.
Yeah,
it could.
Yeah.
So that's the risk involved. And hey, good for him that he didn't opt into the 47, even though it's still 1 year. But that does allow them to get some flexibility.
Do you think that allows them to get somebody like Donovan Mitchell, or because obviously, in my estimation, to frame the question, I think the deal, like you said, Harden even being able to negotiate any kind of a pay cut. You don't see a LeBron or a KD. Pay cut's not entering the conversation when you're talking about those guys. So James is internalizing that he's not that guy anymore. So do you, and when I say that guy, I still think he can be a very efficient facilitator, but what I'm reading from that is that he understands that he's not going to be the primary, maybe even he shouldn't even be the second offensive option. Do you think that allows us to get Donovan Mitchell, or who would be somebody that over the life of this 2-year contract, the win now. Do you think Harden's the number 2, or we do go get somebody?
Yeah, I think we could probably say maybe a 2A, a 2B, depending on whether they do get somebody, because you do have to factor in Tyrese Maxey with this. And I expect Maxey to maybe take a step forward as well, because I
You've
mean,
been big on Maxey. You've been big on Maxey.
Yeah, I have. And when I looked at his progression from his rookie year to his second year, I mean, he averaged almost 10 more points a game from his rookie year, which is significant. And we love what he see on the court and everything, but when you sit down and look at his statistics, it's very impressive. And I think what we should do is
that's what I got on right now. The Mad Max.
There you go. Yes. So I think we should focus also on how much better can Maxey be, because I think he has a high ceiling. And I thought that he was this close to maybe cracking an all-star roster, but I expect him to be perhaps the third all-star with the Sixers. I fully expect that for him. I know that's a big expectation, but I do think that he's capable of being the third all-star for the Sixers.
So if that's the case, they can continue. I do like what I've seen, and it's kind of weird to even let the idea in my mind creep into your mind. Oh, I'm not sure if I want KD, because I really do like. We unfortunately, all respect to Danny Green, multiple time NBA champion, but that kind of piece, a player like him, the Sixers went and got 2-3 guys like that, and you need that when you get to the playoffs. Do they continue to build out that way? Is that what we continue to do? If you do believe that Maxey is going to be that guy, do you think the Sixers think he's going to be that guy?
I do, unless they can go out and get someone like a KD or someone like a Donovan Mitchell. I really don't think that they have enough capital to do so. They're pretty much cap strapped. I mean, you see with Harden taking a pay cut, that only allows them. They were able to get PJ Tucker. They were able to acquire Melton, I should say. And they have a little bit more leeway. Right, Daniel House. Thank you. And they have a little bit more leeway to get somebody, maybe a couple guys at the mid-level exception, something of that nature, because it's about maybe $5 million that they can play with cap-wise. So I don't foresee them getting necessarily another big name unless they're able to get a third team involved, because that the cap situation is pretty tricky, and they have to think about next year, what's going to happen with that player option if Harden does have that deal that's been reported. So there are a number of things, and also I believe this will be the first year for Embiid's extension too. So a lot of things to factor in, and they only have but so much leeway.
Absolutely. With that said, whatever leeway that they could expend, do you think, if you just had to guess, do you think that KD ends up playing home games in South Philly next year, or what?
Nah, I don't think so. I think he has his eyes pretty much out west. You see Phoenix. You even heard rumblings of Golden State. I know Miami is throwing their hat into the fire. He will probably complete that team, I believe, but I just don't think. Well, for one, again, as I mentioned, I don't think the Sixers have enough capital to pull it off, just team for team. And I also don't see both Harden and Durant playing together. I don't see how that's necessarily going to work a second time. It didn't work the first time in Brooklyn, but I don't see how that'll work the second time.
Yeah, I was watching. I love every year, and in a couple of years we won't get to see KD and LeBron do this anymore. It'll be two different guys, and because LeBron won't be here, maybe KD isn't that guy. These guys are way up there. But during the selection of the All-Stars, KD's face when when James Harden was, it was classic. If you guys haven't watched that, go and watch that. It's probably one of
it definitely appeared contentious. So yeah.
So assume the good bet is that KD will not be a Sixer. So with that being said, do you expect the Sixers to be another first round, second round exit this year?
Well, I do think with their offseason additions, I think perhaps that they can go past the second round. You would hope that they will. They better, even more so. But there's still a lot of question marks. Even if they do pass the third round, you look at the other teams that have improved. You look at Miami. You look still at Milwaukee, who without Middleton, they probably would have been back in the finals. Who
Yep.
knows? Because of course you still have Giannis to deal with for probably another decade. So, Milwaukee's always going to be a factor. You also look at Boston
Yes.
being in the finals. We can't overlook them. They picked up Brogdon, and I think that's a good improvement for
It
them
is. It
off the
is.
bench. And some people are already speculating, okay, who's going to run the point, whether it's going to be him or Smart. I still think it's going to be Smart.
You
But
think it's going to be
Brogdon will
Smart? Wow.
it probably could be, but it'll probably be a maturation process as far as getting Brogdon.
Oh,
As far as
initially. Oh, okay.
initially, so yeah, we'll see Brogdon,
Yeah.
playoff time because we saw their shortcomings against Golden State. So,
It's a great
Boston,
move.
yeah,
I don't love the Celtics, but I love that move.
of
It was a
course.
great puzzle piece for that
Yeah,
team.
so it might have been the missing piece that they have because they have that. If Brogdon can stay healthy, of course, because he has had injury problems. But I think the dark horse in the East now, I believe, is Atlanta. Because I think with the acquisition of Murray, I think they've greatly improved, and to put him alongside Trae Young, I think
Oh,
that's a scary proposition.
it is. It is. I got and Steph Curry. People really can't sleep on the way that everybody talks about it. Steph changed the game. Trae Young is that next guy, and he's got the unconscious just range and confidence at times. Yeah, he has his turnovers, but so does Steph. He's the next generation of that, and on some nights he just
I
can't
agree,
miss.
potentially. Right, right. And to put someone like a Murray alongside him, that's going to give him even more open looks because you just can't. I think Atlanta struggled this year because they didn't have enough of a supporting cast as they had, the previous year, and those guys struggled. And I do think with the acquisition of Murray, mind you, they did give up a lot for him, but I think you can't key on Young as in this past year because Murray's going to, both these guys are probably going to require a double team at some
Yeah.
point.
So if the Sixers are a second round exit, say we fast forward 8-9 months from now, and well, more like 10, 11 months from now, they've been eliminated by the Hawks again. All of that frustration gets brewed back up. Do you think that the process is a failure if we don't get a ring?
I think it's hard to say that the process was really a failure, but a couple things are going to happen. They're probably going to move on from Doc Rivers. That's probably number one, and I'm sure a lot of Sixers fans wanted the franchise to move on from him for after this year. But I don't think that was realistic because he still has 3 years left on his contract. Didn't want to pay both Rivers and Brett Brown.
Oh my God. That's the
You
guy
know,
that should have been fired way earlier. All the frustration, people got all this leftover frustration from Brett Brown and letting Brett Brown stink up the joint for too long. Now everybody wants to be all quick. I don't know where you still on that, but if people said fire Doc Rivers, okay, and hire who? Who are we getting? Is Phil Jackson coming out of retirement? Because all y'all aren't going to go coach the team. Somebody's got to coach the team, and this guy's a good coach.
everybody was saying anybody but Doc Rivers. I mean, you look at Sam Cassell, who I think should have been a head coach. He should have been an NBA
Yes.
head coach, a couple years ago. I mean, he's right for an NBA job. I don't know if it's necessarily here, but Sam Cassell, he's probably would be the next guy in line. Because I don't think he would be the type. Let's just say, we do fast forward as you said. I don't think the Sixers could afford to let someone like him get out of town if they do move on from Rivers. But as far as the process is concerned, they do have to get something out of Embiid because one of my buddies here in Philadelphia, who also has a talk show, he mentioned to me that when you look down the line of these Sixers draft picks over the entire process, going back to Sam Hinkie, no more Michael Carter Williams, no more Okafor, there's no more Simmons, no more Fultz. So basically, Embiid is the last guy standing. Who, when you go back a few years ago to when he couldn't get on the court because of those various injuries, what did we wait 2-3 seasons before he actually got on the court? A lot of people thought, myself included, that okay, man, is this guy ever going to get on the court? So this is the last. This is the last. This is the last season. Like, if you're binge watching, if we're binge watching the process,
Yes.
how many seasons is your favorite show going to go on? So what is this? Almost like the 10th season of the process. I stopped counting.
Do you think that taking what you're saying, what's the likelihood that the process movie ends with this Philadelphia 76ers trading Joel Embiid? Do you think that is a possible ending to this whole thing?
I don't think that they would. I don't think it would be beyond their wildest dreams to want to trade him. But if they fall short, as far as what you mentioned, some of the problems, just to say if Harden still doesn't live up to his billing or what they expect or what they gave up for him, we still have to look back at what the Sixers did give up for him. Besides beyond Ben Simmons, of course, because I know he's a trigger for everybody.
Yeah.
But you look back at it, the only scenario I see to where they trade Joel Embiid if he wants out.
Yep.
If he goes and say, okay, it's time for me to chase a ring. It's time for me to latch on with somebody. I'm not getting any younger. I have a lot of mileage on the tires and everything. I want to go somewhere where I can possibly get a ring, not so much be the man as I've been for almost a decade here in Philadelphia. And, that's the only scenario that I kind of see.
I think the frustration is brewing, is simmering. I think more recently the Sixers have soberly, they have responsibly managed I'm very proud of how they handled the Ben Simmons thing. They handled it like they didn't let him just force his way out early. They got what they could. Now they apparently are putting Harden on a reasonable deal, but the Sixers were in the second round, just like as far as they have gotten before with Evan Turner and Drew Holiday and Andre Iguodala and all of these folks. And then if you end up the same place, you've had some great memories, but I think Daryl Morey stays, but I think you see a big kind of wholesale change in the next year or so. If there isn't, they're in a win now situation. So if they don't even make a conference finals, we could be seeing big changes in Philadelphia.
No doubt. And I think a lot of pressure is on Daryl Morey, of course, as well, I should say. Obviously, he's here for the long term. The Sixers ownership, like some, they brought him here. They brought over his homie to run the franchise, basically, on the business side, Tad Brown. So he's going to be here for the foreseeable future. And I do like Morey. He's a charismatic guy. He's a smart guy. He's an NBA lifer. But you get right down to it, what's the fascination with him? I don't necessarily get it, because what does he want? He has yet to win NBA title as a general manager, as a team president. So there's pressure on him as well. And again, for me, what worries me is that there's some type of blind faith, through rose-colored glasses for Morey's. I say, okay, he's here to make changes. He got Ben Simmons out. He played hardball with Ben Simmons. He got him out of here. But what do we have now? We have Houston North, Houston East, whatever you want to call it. And that has to work. And if it does not work, the pressure should be on Daryl Morey as much as anyone else.
And the answer is not Mike D'Antoni. I don't want to hear it. Nobody talk to me about Mike D'Antoni.
Could be next in line.
No, thank you. Good coach. has amazing records and all that. I mean, the Suns offense, but D'Antoni with no defense, and that is not going to fit for Philadelphia. People are going to be furious.
Well,
So,
well, I've heard just as many people like D'Antoni say, okay, because they like the offense and the running gun and all those things. So I've heard just as many people say that they would welcome a D'Antoni. Again, anybody but Doc Rivers, but again, be careful what you ask for.
yeah, yeah. Well, we'll see. So, Kyrie, where do you think? Because he's another person who we don't know what's going on. KD is his running mate. Apparently, then you hear that Kyrie signed back. They didn't talk. Just a whole weird scenario went down there, and apparently now Kyrie could be on the move. Where do you think he ends up?
The whole Brooklyn situation is just intriguing for me because it's a mess. It's a mess, and where's KD's going to go? Where's KD going to go? Where's Kyrie going to go? I think he could eventually end up with the Lakers. They don't have a lot of capital either, so that probably has to be a three-way deal. As we talked about with the Sixers probably making some type of big move. But I could very well see the Brooklyn Nets going into training camp, going to the season with both Kyrie and KD, because from Brooklyn's standpoint, they have to get this right too.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of pressure on Bobby Marks to keep that team relevant.
Yeah.
No matter what they've done, they're still second class citizens to the New York Knicks. So no matter how good or bad the Knicks are, that's just a reality. So Brooklyn has to do whatever they can to stay relevant. Yes, they got they got picks from Philly. They can have other picks elsewhere, but they have to get as much capital as they possibly can for number one KD and number two Kyrie Irving, because again they have to find a way to stay relevant. And whether they use those draft picks in return potentially to get other marquee players, or to just try to get the best guys out of college, because again the Brooklyn situation is a mess, and they have to get this right, and they can't just give away either KD or Kyrie for peanuts.
So let's say somehow they figure it out. The Lakers get a three-way trade. Somehow they get rid of Russ and find somebody who wants him, then wants the picks. They figure it out. They get Kyrie to LA. What do you think does that make the Lakers a threat to the Warriors and the Suns and the other teams out west?
I do think they're a threat. I don't think a major threat, but it certainly makes them relevant. I think it gets them back in the playoffs. It gets them back in contention. And you still don't know what Golden State is going to do. And even though those guys are in their 30s now with Steph and Green, I mean, these guys looked as healthy as they possibly could be in the finals. I was truly impressed with them going back. I thought they had a chance to go back to the finals, but I was just truly impressed of how they were able to progress through the playoffs. It just seemed like they just got better and better after each round. I know Memphis gave them a bit of a run for the money, but I mean, those guys are going to be contenders once again. I know people will probably pick Phoenix. They'll probably pick the Clippers if they can come back healthy with Leonard and George again. That's still a great 1-2 punch. But I think it would be good for the Lakers to get Kyrie, because it definitely, of course, they want to be back in the spotlight. That was a disappointing season for them last year, and it looks like Westbrook is a square peg in a round hole. But again, who's going to take him at this point in his career? So I do think that them acquiring Kyrie will take them to the next level. Championship level, I'm not sure, but they'll certainly be relevant back in the postseason.
It's just good for basketball. Basketball is better when the Lakers are good. I'm not even.
Yeah, it will get people talk, whether you love them, hate them. anywhere in between. There's probably not many gray areas with as far as
Right.
how fans view the Lakers. You either love them or hate them, but it
Right.
certainly makes them relevant and it gets everybody talking again.
Absolutely. No, and when the Lakers are, I mean, everybody, again, love or hate LeBron. Only the real like LeBron actual haters, like people who want to see bad for him, want to see him end his career not in the playoffs. I want to see one last run from him, and then maybe that's it. But having him go out and be done with basketball, one of the top, he's still, in my opinion, a top 5 player in the league, top 6, 7 player.
Sure.
So to have him out of the playoffs, that just isn't good for business.
No, it's not. And again, no matter where you fall, where you fall
The love
on
hate.
on a love hate, right? The love hate, yardstick, I should say. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So, it gets people talking. I mean, people. He's one of those polarizing figures that people love to hate. I don't get the hate necessarily. I've never gotten it. But I understand why people do it because he's a nemesis. I mean, he was in the finals for almost a decade straight. So, people hate dynasties or so-called dynasties or even the threat of one. But, and people have this misconception of, I'm going on a rant here, so excuse me.
No.
People
I'm
have
here
this
for it.
misconception that dynasties are bad for
Right.
sports. This is completely the contrary.
I
I mean,
know.
you look at history, especially in the NBA, with the exception of, you can get this decade a little bit because we're still early in this decade. But you go back to the 80s. You had to go back all the way to maybe the 1970s where you didn't have a constant dynasty in a decade. 80s were the Lakers. Were either Lakers and the Celtics. You threw the
Yep.
Sixers in that one year.
Yep.
Then
Pistons.
Detroit came over. Yeah, Detroit came over, went back to back, and then the Bulls had their run. Then it was the Lakers, and then now it's modern day the Spurs. Sprinkling in their 5 championships over a dozen years, and then you have the Heat. With their run, winning their championships, and then you have the LeBron, just basically the LeBron era, and then Golden State. So, I mean, this talk about people are sick in dynasties, people are sick, want parity and everything. It's all a myth, man.
It is, and it's a love to hate thing, because even if it's not your team and there is like that hated dynasty. Like against the Cowboys, I very much dislike the Cowboys, but you love to hate them as well. Like it's good to be able to see them on Thanksgiving and be able to watch. I get to watch them choke on Thanksgiving. It's like it's fantastic.
Yeah, and franchises like that, they get off on it. They understand the love-hate relationship as well.
Yes.
So I mean, for them to stay right there's no reason. There's no mistake when you see Jerry Jones always in the news. You see him in the forefront, talking whether it's not talking about his Cowboys. Of course, he'll always talk about them.
Yep.
But he's always in the forefront as far as NFL news. Anything that's going on with franchise, anything that's going on with the business of the NFL, who's in the forefront is Jerry Jones. And who is Jerry Jones synonymous with? The Cowboys. He is the Cowboys brand. And, it's always been that way. You can go the same with baseball, with the Yankees. And again, we revert back to basketball here with the Lakers and everything. It's the same. And kind of Golden State is kind of getting into that type of persona where people are starting to hate him because, you have part of your society, your basketball society that hates on Steph Curry.
Yep.
And, but he has that clean cut image.
Yes.
And people tend to hate that,
Yes.
it's him, his wife.
Yep.
And then, you have the controversy now with his parents splitting up and all. So
Yep.
somehow that, people want to use that against them. And then you saw what happened in Boston. And, Boston is notorious for, their fandom and all. Ice Curry can't cook and, all those type of things. So
that is good for them.
It's all relative to the sports in the NBA.
Boston in the history, and I just got to get this on the record because it's the truth. They were well behaved for how Boston fans have been. And Philadelphia fans get a rap. We're just generally kind of rude. and kind of aggressive. Boston fans have been virulently racist and just despicable for since the beginning. I mean, even with the Bird thing, Bird himself was not a racist, but a lot of stuff went into that. And when, Magic came into town, there was a lot of stuff that folks had to deal with. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who people don't even remember now because, unless you're like a basketball historian, lover of the game, and you go back and do your research. These young people don't know that Kareem was like a social justice. Kareem was woke for an athlete before that, and the Boston fans hated that. So
since he was a teenager, basically, yeah. Kareem was. Listen, I mean, he was rubbing shoulders with Bill Russell, Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali, those guys, when he was basically still a freshman in college, a sophomore in college.
Mm-hmm.
So you go back to his New York days. I mean, you do research on Kareem, and I know, he was in the news recently for what he said about LeBron and all, and that wasn't right what he said. But in this age of cancel culture,
oh my God.
I'm not going to cancel
Right.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar because his career he
Yeah.
has lived. I mean, well, here's another thing. Here's another thing that nobody talks about. He was one of the few athletes that boycotted the 1968 Olympics. I mean, we talk
But he was
about
Lou Alcindor.
Right, exactly. He was Lou Alcindor. We talk about the Tommy Smith and John Carlos, risking their careers for, doing the Black Power sign at the Olympics. They were there. But Kareem actually boycotted the Olympics. And, nobody talks about that. And one of the things for me as a journalist, I want to say, if I ever if I ever get to run into Kareem in the airport, I will ask him about that. And we could do a whole another podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just activism in sports and
yes,
and athletes and all. But I can go on a whole rant with that. But for someone like Kareem, what he went through as a basketball player, and we talk about Boston, we talk about Bill Russell. There's no mistake that Bill Russell couldn't wait to get out of Boston when he retired.
Right.
So that just gives you an idea of how deep rooted that is. And you talk about Philly fans and everything. It's I laugh, and I end up being an apologist, and sometimes I don't want to be an apologist, and I just try to tell people, listen, we're just rough around the edges.
Yes.
We mean well.
Yes.
Most of us, I should say.
Yes.
We mean well. We just want to win, and we just I categorize it as, listen, if our teams don't win, we just can't go off to the beach.
Right.
You know what I mean? Especially in the wintertime. We could drive an hour to the Jersey Shore, whatever. But there's not that many things to do if our teams don't do well. So
you're not actually gonna. I haven't seen people get like beat up. There's no like beat. Well, I guess you see these random Instagram fights, but Instagram allows people to see all kinds of foolishness and a lot of stuff that gets set up. Honestly, I would say it's like 90-10. There is like the 10% who are like there for problems.
Right.
They want all the smoke. They don't care about the game.
Yeah. I will say this though, Matt. I do think it's time that we start owning up to how rough we are, because we're a very sentimental bunch. As Philly fans, we're awfully sentimental, but we don't want to be called that. We know how we are.
Yeah.
But we don't want to be called out on it by somebody else. It's almost like, and it's the same with the city. Like, even if you're just, if you're from Philadelphia and everything, and you've been along, even if you moved away, or you still had that Philly in you.
Yes.
But we're kind of like, I categorize it like this, and I laugh about it every time. And when I try to tell people, okay, are you guys really like that? And I say, okay, we're like a dysfunctional family.
Yes.
Okay, we'll fight amongst each other. We'll argue. We know how bad things are. We know that our teams can come up short. We know what the political problems are.
Yeah.
We know what the problems are financially, poverty,
Yeah.
and everything, but we don't need anybody else to tell us. You know what I mean? So, we're like a family. We can talk about each other, but we don't let anybody else talk
Yeah.
about us.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how
And the
you
games
define
is
a
how we
Philly fan.
unite. You get an EAGLES and like all
Right.
kinds of people who would never talk to each other or high fiving and all that.
Right, and one more thing, if I could fit this in,
Go ahead.
I remember, and this was a long time ago. This is in the McNabb era.
OJ, you cut out real quick. Technical difficulty, folks. We get him right back. Now's a great time to go get some water, hit pause, go do something, come back, because we got much more. Okay, you're back.
Okay, Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
Yes. So I believe it was 2009, and a
The
buddy
end
of
of
mine
McNabb.
already, right? A buddy of mine lived in Charlotte. He had moved to Charlotte. Guy that I grew up with. Me and another buddy, we took a road trip down there, and we went to see the Carolina game, and it was so funny because Eagles fans they're one of the best at traveling. They travel in multitudes. So we were down there, downtown Charlotte, and all, and we didn't know these other fans from a can of paint. And listen, for one, I've never seen so much beer in my life. We all could have took home a dozen cases individually, and these were complete strangers. And we were in downtown Charlotte in one of the parking lots, and these complete strangers say, "Hey, we all had Eagles jerseys on," and guys like, "Hey, they had all this food and help yourself." And again, we don't know these guys, and it was like we all assembled. Again, we
Yeah.
can argue on social media.
Yeah.
We can argue. We can argue amongst ourselves on talk radio and everything, but
Yep.
when it's game day, we
Yep.
all assemble. We
Yes.
all assemble,
Yes.
and it's the craziest thing
It is.
ever. And
It
I
is.
remember when we made our way to the stadium down in Charlotte, the guys were like, "Listen, you guys need anything, you run into trouble, we'll be in section so and so." So they came into the stadium ready to fight. We were there to unite. So it's almost like an Avengers movie. You know how they argue
Yes.
and everything, and
Yes.
they argue over you know way of life and
Yes.
society this and society that. But the enemy comes to town,
Yep.
Avengers assemble.
Yep.
So
Yep. Yep. Yep.
so it's the weirdest thing ever. But you got to love being from Philly, man, because it's so much pride. And whenever you see how I roll on social media,
Absolutely.
we're talking about anywhere from Will Smith to Jasmine Sullivan or
Yes.
whoever.
Yes.
It's we
Yes.
gung ho for them, man.
Yes. Yes.
No matter
No,
roots,
I watched Independence Day, the original. I watched it like 4 times over 4th of July weekend. It kept coming on. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna watch it. I'll make sure I watch it on TV because
right.
I do. There is, and since we brought this up briefly, and since now we stumbled upon Will Smith, I'll just say that there is a place for finding out about who someone is and needing to decide about whether you want to associate with them. But this is where the quote cancel culture has gone wrong. Is it like if we scoop something that we believe tells us who you are, despite all of the evidence to the contrary, how you live your life day to day. Will Smith, that moment of Will Smith going on stage and slapping Chris Rock, that is not the totality of who that man has been, the greatness that has been in him and all the good that he has done. If you can just lose in a moment, then basically we should just not associate with anybody, because all of us have had ugly moments where we've done something stupid.
Listen, if I could write a list of everything that I've done wrong, everything that I've done stupid, as a father,
Right.
as a ex-husband, soon to be, husband again,
Mm-hmm.
employee,
Yep.
however, supervisor, whatever. Even with my writing interview, I've made mistakes. I've made mistakes in interviews, man. I
Yep.
mean, we all fall short.
Yep.
And with that whole Will Smith situation, I had fun with it because it brought me back to West Philly. He from West Philly like I
Yeah.
am. So my thought was he got West Philly on him. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And there's some misconception that Will Smith is a soft guy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you read up, and I don't want to put a plug in here, but if anyone who has picked up his book and just kind of read it, or get some excerpts from it, or you've spoken to or interviewed someone who knows him, who goes back to West Philly, it's a whole nother element. My
Mm-hmm.
fiance, she's basically from the same neighborhood as where he went to high school.
Okay.
That's a neighborhood called, it's still West Philly, but they call it Hilltop. So when that incident happened with Chris Rock, I said, oh yeah, should he have done it? Of course not. But it was almost like
Yes.
don't F around and find
Yes.
out moment.
Yes. Yes.
Because
And that is
a
important for
lot.
life. Like there, I think it was a clarifying moment. Since I'm going to speak on it, I'm going to speak on it. I think it was a clarifying moment. No, violence is wrong. You should not be going up and inflicting violence on people, but people operate as if it's not a possibility in life, and that's clarifying for people. Should he have done it? Absolutely not. Absolutely
Right,
not.
right, right. But yeah, I just kind of had fun with it. I mean, because what was Chris Rock going to do as far as pressing charges? I mean, he would have looked more like a fool just for pressing charges and everything. I get the whole thing, but I just kind of had fun with it because
Absolutely.
us West Philly dudes got to stick together. So I never met Will, by the way, but
Oh, okay.
it's that Philly pride. I mean, I took it as a fan.
Hmm.
We're tough when it comes to sports and everything, but Will Smith go up and slaps Chris Rock. People want to get soft now. It's like, come on, man, we from Philly. What's up? We got to back him up a little
And
bit.
I
Even
wasn't shocked.
even in
I felt
even in
like America
fun.
was more shocked than I was. Like,
Oh yeah, well, of course it is because that's America. So that's a whole nother thing. So, and I know you talk about that often. So, but yeah, it's you would think that he tried to assassinate the president.
right. So Philly pride, are the Phillies for real? Are they someone to be worried about if you were another NL playoff team?
Well, I think it was I was against it at first, but it turned out to be the best thing that they moved on from Joe Girardi because it's obvious that the team was pressing; they weren't responding to him. They seem much more comfortable now. I do think that they can hold on to the wild card. I think at this point, it might be too much to ask of them to try and catch the Mets and also the Braves, who are actually creeping up on the Mets
Right. Right.
because those teams they have much more young talent that can ride through a marathon of a baseball season. Baseball is just brutal for someone
Mhm.
who played in my younger days, and I've coached little leagues and senior leagues. I even done some umpiring, by the way, so I've been
Mm,
around a little bit. But that's
mm.
beside. I digress. But I do think that they can hold on to the wild card and just kind of tread water while Bryce Harper is
Yep.
injured. But I do think that they're still going to have trouble scoring runs. That's probably going to be if they don't make the playoffs. That's probably going to be the reason that holds them back because they just don't have a consistent lineup, especially without Harper. And some people are suggesting that Kyle Schwarber, who was just named the All Star reserve, to get him out of the leadoff spot. I think that would be a monumental mistake
It would.
because
We already
if
made that
you
mistake. We already made it.
right because if you put him down a lineup, he's not going to see nearly the amount of pitches that he sees now. Because
Right.
when you're batting leadoff and everything, there's really not that
Yes.
much of a strategy to get a leadoff batter out, other
Yes.
than just beginning of the game. And I know he's hitting a lot of home runs with nobody on base because the 7, 8, 9 hitters aren't getting on base consistently. But I think the Phillies, they do have enough pitching. Their starting pitching has been very well. Their bullpen has been pretty excellent since Joe Girardi's firing. And I do think that the new manager is doing an excellent job of having these guys relax. Rob Thompson, having these guys relax and just going in every single day, believing that they can win.
Yeah, I think you used a good phrase there. Treading water is what I expect, what I hope for as well. Hope and expect. I don't think we're going to win. Red October. I would love it. I would love to see it, but let's pump the brakes. Let's just get to the playoffs. Let's just have a winning record, folks. How about that? For the first time in a decade, let's just do that first.
And they're probably going to need to make another move or two, maybe get another pitcher, get another bat in the lineup. I still think they need another center fielder. Because the guys that they've been plugging in, I just don't think they're consistent enough. Well, I don't want to say consistent enough. I just think there's just a lack of talent there. And again, when you look at guys, you look at teams like the Mets, the Braves, even the Marlins, even though they're behind the Phillies a few games. I mean, these guys have some young talent. They have a much better farm system where, they're lacking at a certain position or so. They can just call somebody up, man, and, they can just plug in, and the Phillies still have a ways to go to just get their farm system going where they can be a consistent contender every year. We say, okay, we're lacking in a certain position. Let's call up this kid, and we can groom him to be a major league player.
No doubt. For the folks listening, we're about 2.5 weeks out from Eagles training camp, the opening of camp. There's a lot going on. Who are your most intriguing players? Who are you most looking forward to watching on both sides of the ball? It could be somebody who was already on the Eagles or one of our additions.
Well, I think offensively, it does start with Jalen Hurts. And, again, there seems to be, there actually are some gray areas with Jalen Hurts. You have a good amount of people who cover the team and a good amount of fans who just say, hey, let's just wait and see. But then you do have the extremes to where, okay, going to go far with Jalen, but it seems to be more so to where, he's not the guy. I don't really expect him to be the guy. Some people even think that he may regress. But I believe in Jalen Hurts. I believe that he's going to move this team forward. I do believe that he's going to be a better passer this year. I do believe, and another thing that you have to take in that people aren't taking in consideration, that this is the first time in his entire career, from college to pro, that he'll be with the same offense in consecutive years. So that's a major factor. You look at all his time in college with Alabama, different offense, they ran offensive coordinators in and out of Alabama, like, like changing shoes, changing socks. So, and then
because of all their success, of course.
Right, exactly. So, and then, you had Lane Kiffin in there. I know him and Saban didn't necessarily get along too. So you had that factor. And then, of course, he moved along to Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley, his offense and everything. You get to Philadelphia in an impossible situation with Carson Wentz, Doug Peterson, just trying to, get his head straight for 4 games and, in an unbelievable situation, taking over for a franchise quarterback whom we thought was a franchise quarterback. And then, you come in with Sirianni. It appeared that Sirianni didn't know what he was doing. Where did the offensive philosophy come from? We all found out just in this offseason that he actually turned over the playbook to Shane Steichen. So, again, you're still looking at basically 2 different offenses within a season. So Jalen Hurts has not had the consistency that he needs to excel as a quarterback. Does he have to prove that on the field? Of course, because he's still kind of auditioning for this job long term. But I do think he's right for the job. I do think that he's going to be the Eagles quarterback going forward. Number one, I do predict them to win the division. because I do think they have enough overall talent to
Okay.
overtake Dallas.
Okay.
I think they have the talent to match them and possibly overtake them
Okay.
with their additions, which I'll get to in a moment. But I also think, and I'm going to go out on a limb and
Okay.
say this on your show. I said this on another show, but I'm going to say this here. I do think that we have the possibility that by this time next year, we'll be talking about, okay, is there going to be a contract extension for Jalen Hurts?
I think he would. I think he needs to really impress. I think he would have to have a very strong year, but it's possible. NFC Championship
Yeah, that's
appearance.
fair.
NFC Championship appearance would seal the deal. That would be it. And a
Yes,
strong
yeah.
showing in the divisional round.
I just think it could. I think it just could be a strong showing in their first playoff game. Strong showing. I would say a victory first and foremost, but I would just think a strong showing in their first playoff game, whether that be wild card or that divisional round. If he plays well, of course you want to win, but even if he plays well in defeat, I think I'll just I'll put it this way, just to not run it back, but just on to be on a level side. I do think that he will make the Eagles' decision going forward difficult. I think he will make it difficult to move on from him.
Do you
Put
think
it that way.
so? Let's just put a little meat on the bones there. Do you think
Sure.
are you saying he's going to get paid like he's Dak or somebody, or is this Jalen Hurts discussing a team friendly extension?
Well, I think with what the Eagles have gone through with Carson Wentz, I might lean more towards a team friendly. But the way these quarterback contracts are coming, and I think even with not even with Dak, I think with listen, what what Cleveland gave Deshaun Watson, that's totally going to change the market because when you go in, if you're a quarterback, let's say it looks like Lamar Jackson is next in line, right? So if you're a quarterback, if you're an NFL quarterback, even if you're straight mediocre, well, look at what Kirk Cousins' extension was, right? So if you're a quarterback going into um, the owner's office, the general manager's office, listen, Deshaun Watson, who hasn't played in a year, possibly 2 years, depending on how he gets suspended, he has a
Wow.
guaranteed contract.
I think I know where you're
I'm Lamar
going.
Jackson.
Okay.
I'm a former MVP of the league. Okay. I want some guaranteed money.
So
All right.
Jalen's got to get MVP votes. If we're, I would be against. I like Jalen.
He does. He does. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fair. But I'm just trying to
Yeah.
get you to look at long term of
Yes.
what the quarterback market is going to
It
be.
is. It
And
is.
let's just say, okay, if he does ball out, as you say, ball out and gets them to the championship game, ball out and at least a divisional round, he makes it hard for them. You know, the Eagles are going to want to do a team friendly deal because that's what they do.
Yep.
And, you know, they're going to be a little bit afraid, a little bit of reluctant because of what happened with Carson Wentz. But we all know that Jalen doesn't have that type of personality
No.
because he wasn't groomed that way. Um, and he wasn't groomed with a silver spoon in his mouth, even though his
No.
dad was a coach, right?
Yes.
So, you know, I'm just trying to give you the view of the horizon as far as what quarterbacks will be making. I don't think they're going to go for a team friendly deal, but I don't know if they can necessarily get away with that. I know we're jumping way ahead, but if Jalen does ball out, I mean, he could ask for a good amount of money and it
Yeah.
would be deserving as far as market wise. And
A
it's really
shorter
not
team friendly, a shorter good deal.
probably a shorter deal. But again, the way that this market is, it's all market value. When people say even, and I'm very critical of quarterbacks, but when you look at, okay, people are quick to say, oh, yeah, he isn't worth that. This player isn't worth that. That player isn't worth that. Look at what AJ Brown got.
Right.
I didn't even imagine, we're talking receivers, but I didn't even imagine that the
Yep.
Eagles would give him an extension that quickly. But that's what the market requires.
Okay.
So it'll be interesting to see what they come up with, and it will be team friendly. But he could also go into the office and say, "Hey, you guys didn't want me. You guys were kicking the tires for Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson." So that could be some leverage on his part too. But again, that's all jumping ahead. But just to go back and answer your question, I do think that he will improve this year. I do think he will excel. And I do think that he will make the Eagles' decision to possibly move on from him very difficult.
Who's your second addition? Who on the defensive side of the ball? Who are you looking forward to watching?
Well, when you first asked this question, my first thought is Hassan Reddick.
Okay.
But I do think this is going to be an X factor, and I think it's Nakobe Dean.
Mm.
And I think he's going to, I think if he's as healthy, and he gets through and he learns the progressions and he learns the NFL game, I think he's going to be the absolute steal of the draft. Because I think he's that dark horse. He's that X factor that can even bring that defense even to the next level. I mean, they have playmakers now. They have, of course, you have Slay. You have Brandon Graham coming back. You don't know what you're going to get with Cox at this point at this point in his career, but you have Hassan Reddick, who I think is going to possibly get double-digit sacks this year. That's an excellent addition for them. I do think he's probably going to be the most consistent player on that defense, other than Darius Slay. And of course, Jordan Davis.
Mm.
You put him on that line, that could be scary. But I do think Nakobe Dean, if he gets the NFL game, he understands the NFL game, and he makes that quick transition, he's going to be the absolute steal of the draft. No doubt in my mind.
Yeah, I just know being in the link when you see a deep ball. There was deep balls to Rager last year. The crowd just goes crazy. It is a amazing feel. Even watching it on TV, exciting moments. I'm hoping for some exciting moments. I expect some exciting moments from AJ Brown, and I think Jordan Davis could be. I have an article coming out, so if people track that my writing, but in the Liberty line, I have one coming out saying that Marcus Epps is actually the X factor. But I just think that he's going to be an important piece playing that free safety position. But I can't wait to watch Jordan Davis, because Jordan Davis could actually be huge impact on Marcus Epps. We just need him to be serviceable, good, offer some help in the slot, let them mix and match and make things happen. Jordan Davis could be a game changer. It could change the trajectory.
Yeah, he could be a beast. Yeah, he could be a beast for sure. And I know all eyes are going to be on him. And again, you have that healthy defensive line with a Graham, with a Cox. I'm sure he's going to learn a lot from those guys. Also, Hargrave as well. So if he can get into that line and make some noise, man, this is where I think the improvement can be. This is where we're talking about the talent. And the Eagles needed upgrade on talent, especially on defense. And I think with the addition of Reddick, Davis, and Dean, these guys could probably make it to the next level. And that's why I do think they have a great chance of winning the division.
So you said that you think that the Eagles edge out the Commanders, the Cowboys, and the Giants to win the division. How many wins do you think that it takes to do that? Because obviously you think that that's what's going to happen. So how many wins do we need for that to become a reality?
I think 11 could do it.
Okay.
I see them as an 11-6 team
Okay.
right now. They could be 12-5 if things break nicely. And again, that of course that starts with Hurts. And again, let's not exclude the fact of Sirianni too. I mean, he has to be on the ball from week 1 to week 18. I mean, he learned on the job, just like
yes,
Jalen
he
Hurts
did. Yes, he did.
And we can't have any of that nonsense the first quarter of the season. And as far as, I don't know if he's going to go back to calling plays or he's going to keep it to Steichen. We got to keep it with Steichen. However they do it, but I mean, the game has to come to him quickly, and we can't have 4 games wasted to where you have to you have to figure out whether you're going to be a running team or a passing team or anything in between. And it does worry me a little bit of how they go about the off-season programs, how they go about training camp. But I'm all for player safety. I'm all for player empowerment. These guys have fought for this for decades.
Yep.
I mean, we no longer live in the Andy Reid
Yep.
era, the Dipper Mill era, where you're having 2-a-days and 2-3 hour practice and everything. Those things are just brutal.
They
and
are.
I know I know you see a lot of injuries nowadays and everything, and people say, "Oh yeah, they're not practicing enough." But I just think it's probably where maybe guys work out a little bit too much. Maybe guys, the game has just not caught up to where guys are bigger, stronger, faster nowadays. So it's a lot of factors in there, but I just think that this is big for Sirianni too. I mean, I know he's not going to get fired after this year or anything like that, but he has to take it next level too.
Yes,
as much as anybody else.
Absolutely. So quick lightning round here. Jalen Hurts over under 35 total touchdowns.
35 over touchdowns. So
running. If he catches it like Nick Foles, passing it 35.
So you kind of anticipate that he'll get maybe close to, he'll get at least half a dozen touchdowns, maybe 10. I'll say
last year. He did 10 on the ground last year.
I say under. I'm going
under.
Here.
Okay.
Under.
33. Under. If I say it was 33, 32.
Yeah, I think 33 is a good number.
Okay. Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders did not score a rushing touchdown last season. Over under 2 rushing touchdowns this season.
I say over.
Okay.
In fact, I'm almost ready to take that to the sports book. I mean, you take into account, he wasn't healthy for some of that too, but he only had 2 touchdowns. That's really a small amount. But yeah, I would have to think that he gets over 2 touchdowns.
AJ Brown, 1,250 receiving yards.
1,250. Ooh, that's a good one, man. Because you factor in him, you factor in Goddard, you factor in Smith. Okay, I'll say over.
Okay. Over. I would take the under, but I would love. They're lighting it up if because that's for that very reason you said, because Goddard and Quez and Zach Pascal's going to make plays.
Right.
And is Jalen's taking a big step as a passer if he gets there too.
Listen, him and AJ Brown are boys and everything. I know he's going to get him the ball.
Okay.
I know AJ's going to do his thing. AJ feels like he has a lot to prove also.
Mm-hmm.
From his days in Tennessee, he had an off year, quote unquote off year. So yeah, I'll take. I'm not that confident in it, but I'll take the over.
Okay. Dallas Goedert, 7 receiving touchdowns.
I'll take the over on that too.
Okay.
Even if it's just 8, I'll take the over on that.
Okay.
Because I think things are going to open up more for Dallas Goedert. But he has to catch the ball too, because he had his share of drops.
He is a big dude. I got a chance to see him in person.
Yeah, he's huge.
And he was telling me, he told me that AJ Brown is bigger than him. So I mean, that's amazing. That guy.
I can believe it. I can believe it.
That's amazing.
You never realize how big these players are until you're up close with them, especially in training camp.
Yeah.
I mean, even a backup tight end, Richard Rodgers. I mean, I was on the sidelines, and there was a play where he caught a this a couple of years. He caught a pass from Wentz, and I mean, he came straight at me like a freight train, and I'm like, okay, do I need to get out the way or anything? I mean, he ended up stopping, but I mean, he looked like a runaway freight train, and that's the backup tight end. So you can just imagine how big these guys are.
You brought this guy up earlier, Hassan Reddick, over under 8 sacks.
I'll take the over. I think he's a 10 sack guy.
Okay.
Um, I do think that again, we talked about the additions and everything. If that defensive line is coming back healthy and they are just average, I think that's going to open things up for Reddick to just freelance to just get to the quarterback. And again, there's pressure on, well, there's pressure from my standpoint because obviously the Eagles love him. Um, people who cover him love him. But I think with, oh gosh, what is his name? Defensive coordinator. Um,
Oh, Gannon. Jonathan
Jonathan
Gannon.
Gannon. I'm sorry. So yes.
No.
So he has no excuses now, in my
Yes.
estimation.
The
And
cupboard
again,
is
I think
full.
now he's going to get fired and everything else. Yeah, he did the best that he could and everything. The cupboard was bare. He didn't have the talent. I
Right.
saw that. I give him that mulligan. But okay, this year we get to see what type of defensive coordinator he's all about.
Oh,
So I mean,
they're
again,
loaded.
this is on him. You got the guys now. You got some young talent mixed with the old talent and everything. Unleash it. We'll see if you're really a good defensive coordinator or this thing is just by just by hearsay. So
I'm
there
gonna
you
throw
go.
another one in there because he just came to mind for me. I'm gonna put the same question to you, Josh Sweat, over under 8 sacks.
I'll say under.
Me too.
Because I think Josh Sweat has some talent. I think he's a solid defensive lineman, but I mean he has to prove it to me that he can
Yes.
be a high set guy.
Yes.
I think he's more of a, I won't say situational, but
Yes. That's how I'm starting to feel about him.
yeah. So until he proves
Unfortunately,
otherwise,
'cause I like him.
until he proves otherwise, again, he's a solid player, but I don't think he's at that level yet where we can talk about, he's going to be some type of sack master.
And Sweat, if somebody sends this to you, like, oh, they're dissing you, take that and listen to that before the game. When I say situational pass rusher, that is not exactly a knock because Chris Long, I don't know if the Eagles win the Super Bowl in 2017 without Chris Long. Vinny Curry and Situate. Yes. I mean, there were guys who made havoc and he can be that guy. He's not a 70, 80 play defensive end from what I've seen.
Yeah, I agree with you. And again, this has been the Eagles' long-time philosophy. I mean, they like to rotate guys anyway. So, I mean, it's probably not even in their defensive philosophy to have guys with those high sack numbers. But you bring a Reddick in here and everything, he's a hybrid lineman slash linebacker. So that's going to be basically his only job. So it's really going to be interesting to see what Gannon does defensively because he has a lot to work with now. So it's up to him to make it all work. They have to be a difference in the league this year. They have to be.
So the last one I got here is Eagles defense and special teams, 5 total touchdowns.
When you look at today's NFL, Matt, 5 defensive touchdowns is actually a lot.
Yeah,
in today's NFL because it's really difficult to play defense in the league, and you basically have to get turnovers and score in today's league because the offenses are so well ahead of most defenses.
Yep.
Unless you're a Tampa Bay or unless you're the LA Rams. So do you know how many they had last year?
I'll look it up for the viewers.
I'm asking for a lifeline. So
no. It's a good question. Team defensive stats.
Because they did have a couple. I know Slay had at least 2.
Yeah.
I believe he had at least 2. So, okay, I'm going to go over. When I say over, I say about 6.
Let's see. We are pulling it up on the live. So the team had two touchdowns? No, there's no way. Because Singleton had 1.
Right, I remember that.
Slay had 3.
I thought Slay had 3. Okay, so that's 4 right there.
And that's it.
Okay, so 4. So the over-under is
They
5.
had
So
5. I'm sorry. They had 5. They had 5 last year total as a
oh,
team.
take the over. Take the over. Take the over. As bad as mediocre as that defense was, I know their numbers, their overall team numbers didn't look bad. But oh yeah, you gotta go to the bank with that 5. Even if they just get 6, I think
Right.
you gotta go to the bank with that.
Because they got playmakers. I mean,
Right, right.
they're going to need to try to pick on Avonte Maddox, who's a playmaker. They're going to need to try to pick on Kaiser White, with running backs out of the backfield. And I think that's going to make for, and
Yeah, and
also,
that's another guy we didn't bring up who could make a difference in the defense as well. So I forgot all about White. So I mean, again, there is no reason why Miami shouldn't have these guys humming to the football. I mean, no reason. And I give Howie Roseman credit for giving this defense a bit of a makeover and getting some young talent in here and getting some veterans in here that can make plays. And again, the potential with Dean and the potential with Davis and everything. I think you got to be excited for the defense. But what's Gannon going to do? And you got your boys, man. What you going to do?
I'm excited. Yeah, I didn't know. When I asked you the question, I didn't know that we actually scored 5 last year. I'm pretty confident
Yeah, that's exactly why I asked you. It's like, okay, well, we're as mediocre as they were. Where were they last year? Because they did return a few. I mean, I know a couple of them was against Detroit and
Mhm.
different things, and and they have a pretty favorable schedule,
Yes,
especially off the bat. So,
and
I'm like I said, I'm excited about them competing for the division. Yeah,
and
and Dallas has. I'm sorry, man.
no,
Dallas
no, go ahead.
has had a few subtractions. They've kind of regressed as far as, and they couldn't do many things that they could do. That you had a couple guys that were cap casualties and all. They didn't have a. I don't think they had a great draft. So I mean, you factor all those things in. So you saw how they collapsed at the end of the season. So
And I think the Eagles will have a punt returner this year. Last year, they stuck with Jalen Rager on every play. If
good
I'm
lord.
Sirianni, I go to Devin Allen today, if he hasn't already. I say, look, man, the receiving room is just stacked. You're trying to make a return to the NFL. You might be the fastest man on earth. Go prove it. You go earn this punt returner job. It's yours. You can win it.
Right.
You could be a superstar. You're not beaten out. We love Greg Ward. We love Zach Pascal. We're apparently trying to keep Jalen Rager, Quez,
So
Devontae,
I
and
think
AJ.
essentially he would be the 6th receiver.
7.
I believe 7. Oh, 7. Yeah. So it's kind of unprecedented. So it'll probably be his job to win. So I mean, basically as a punt returner, you just got to catch the ball. You just got to catch the ball, know where you are in the field, catch the ball for one, know when not to catch it, know the fair catch, know to let it go. It's not that hard.
Because unless he just completely comes in and just wipes the floor with Rager and just embarrasses, just makes it not close, because they're not going to get rid of Greg Ward for him. They bring in Pascal, Devon, all of these. There's pretty much 5 locks on the team, unless we have an injury. So, but we need to have a punt. Long story short, we hopefully will have a punt returner. The Eagles used to pride themselves on having good defense and special teams.
Good
Hasn't
special
been the
teams, right?
case in a while.
Right.
I hope I got it. If we just get 1 plus what we did last year, we get the over.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I mean, anything you get in the return game is actually a bonus, but it's really just understanding field position.
Right.
And not muffing the ball, not turning it over, and you would save a lot offensively and defensively if you just have a good punt returner.
Rager just made all the wrong decisions when he returned it. He shouldn't have returned it. Went the wrong way. He was running out of bounds prematurely. It was awful. And I know that he's recovering from something that's traumatic and best to him in his personal life. I'm talking about his football playing. The punt returning was not impressive last year.
Yeah, he probably At this point, he probably needs a change of scenery. I heard that the Eagles might have been kicking the tires on maybe moving him. But I wouldn't be surprised if, let's say, they try to make a move come the preseason and just try to move away from him, because the Eagles are very loyal to their first round picks, because of course you don't want to look as you have a bust or a failure. Same with Dillard too. But I just think at this point, Rager just needs a change of scenery just for his own sake.
I don't think anybody wants him. We're going to trade the art museum and Jalen Rager to get a fourth round pick.
You got to do something, man, because I mean, where does he fall on this football team right now? I mean, you just laid it out. You just laid out the depth chart. And again, the only way that they can just justify him keeping him on the roster is just that he was a first round pick, and just bringing in AJ Brown, bringing in Pascal, that changes everything.
It's just silly because Jason Kelce was a 6th round pick. So we go cut him now. Like this idea that you couldn't have been wrong. If you were wrong when your first round pick, you just gotta eat it and ride out the length of the contract.
You factor in the money, you factor in the cap. I don't know what his cap casualty is, his number is this year. So I mean,
he gotta go.
Yeah.
For both.
Just for his own. Just for his own sake. Yes. And again, I understand. I'm about as sensitive with off the field and the humanity of players as anyone.
Yes.
But you do have to produce first and foremost.
Yes.
And again, it just could be better for him. When Nelson Aguilar left, who was actually much more productive than Jalen Rager was, people couldn't wait for him to get out of town. I mean, he's actually had a productive post-Eagles career, first with the Raiders, and he actually had a pretty decent season with the Patriots last year. So
we don't win that Super Bowl without Nelson Aguilar or some of those players.
Not at all, and people tend to forget that.
I mean, he was way more trusted deep threat than Torrey Smith was. Torrey Smith made some good plays down the line. Nelson Aguilar was making he made a lot of plays in the Super Bowl. Go back and watch the game.
He had clutch plays in the Super Bowl. He had clutch plays in playoff games. Well, I know he didn't even have to be much of a factor in the Minnesota game, but I believe he made a couple of clutch passes in the Atlanta divisional playoffs. So they certainly don't win that Super Bowl without Nelson.
No. Well, OJ, this has been a great long conversation. Tell the people where we can follow along before you come back on again, because we got to have you back on to talk about the activism in sport. People try to act like this is a brand new thing. It is not brand new. People have been doing
not at all.
There was a need for activism because people through activism were being kept out. I'll just say that.
Sure.
But before we get into that, because we'll have to get you on again, because that is a show of its own. Where can we follow along and show you some support?
Well, of course, you can always find me on Twitter, at OG Philly. I'm on there all the time, talking about sports, talking about culture, anything that you can think of. But also, of course, follow my work at phillytrib.com. You can see a lot of my articles there. Not only I do things on sports, I do things as far as things that's going on in the community, things that go on just overall in society. I've done quite a few supplements, one on Jackie Robinson that I'm very proud of, Mothers of the Movement, Black Lives Matter. So I do a lot of different things culturally in my writing and in my journalism, and also too you can even with the phillytrib.com, you can even go on my Facebook page. I do have a Facebook page called OJ Philly /journalist. You can go on and like that page, and I post all of my work on that page, which kind of makes it easier to find too.
Awesome.
So definitely follow me there as well.
Go do that, y'all. Thank you so much, OJ. I'll see you soon.
My pleasure, man. Thanks so much.
Take care.